Today on Waiting for the Encore, my guest is Jonathan Terrell. Jonathan is a tremendous performer and devout artist. He's a prolific songwriter who blends together his own brand of country music and rock and roll and Texas romance. His name is synonymous with good times and good music, so please enjoy my chat with Jonathan Terrell.
All right. Joining us is Jonathan Terrell. So happy to have him here. How are you doing, buddy?
Good, man. Good to see you. Been a long time.
You too. Absolutely, man. So I like to jump right in with kind of how the COVID has affected you personally, specifically kind of going back to mid-March. I know you had an album come out recently. Congratulations on that. I was listening to it last night. It sounds fantastic, but I think it was supposed to come out earlier than that. So maybe you can take us back to kind of mid-March, what you had going on, what you had planned for the months to follow the beginning of the lockdown, and how you've kind of changed all that and what you've been up to since.
Well, the record was finished in September of last year. And so we were hoping for I was hoping to get it out in like December or January or, February. But we had some pretty good label interest in it. Or I had, the band, I had some pretty good label interest in it. So, a lot of that was hinging on South by. And so, I just decided to kind of hold on to it for a little longer until South by, just so I could, because I didn't want to like put the record out without being able to be on the road full time for it. And so I figured I'd just kind of hang on to it for a little bit. And then, after, COVID hit and you spend about a week just kind of sitting tight, and then like you see everything start shutting down, and then you're like, okay, I don't think anybody's touring this summer. So I was like, I'm just going to put out a little EP and kind of test the waters. And the EP did really great. So I was like, well, I'm going to put out a single from the record and kind of keep testing the waters. And then, it got picked up on a few playlists, like some curated Spotify playlists. And I was like, okay, I think some people are paying attention. So I was like, I'm not going to wait on anybody else. And I had the time to sit and do all the press for it. So, I didn't hire a PR company. Me and my girl just sat down and looked at a laptop for 3 months and made this crazy list of everybody we knew in the industry and writers and musicians and things we could pass it on to. And, ended up getting, some really great press out of the deal, just from doing it, sending we sent like hundreds and hundreds of personal emails with links and stuff to it. But, I've never had this much traction with a record before. And I think that people were really ready to hear it. And I'm kind of, the silver lining in it was, people had the time to digest it. So, sucks to not be on the road all the time, because that's just kind of what I've done. But it's also been nice to get on a sleep schedule and, have time to write and, have time to read books and digest music myself,
Absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely been one of the pros, is being able to read more than I've been able to read during this whole thing. It's like, for me, usually I find pockets over the years. I find these just pockets where it's like, oh, this is a good time to pound out some books. And I hadn't had one of those in a few years. So I'm kind of running out of steam with it now. But for those first 3-4 months, I was able to get through a lot of good stuff. So
yeah,
same boat there. But yeah, with the release, the DIY PR that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely something that I've been, doing over the years for sure, but definitely during this lockdown, it's like kind of digging in, getting your head way down in there, because there's nothing else to do. There's really nothing else to do. I mean, of course you can write and you can work on your skills and all that's always good to do. I always enjoy that process, but I found myself just being like a tutorial machine, looking through, just learning as much as I can. And, I'm in a spot where I'm just releasing singles for now. Prior to the last year, it's like focused on albums, but then I was like, well, I'm just going to focus on singles now. So it's more of a, pick something, work on it for a month, PR it, and then move on to the next one. And I kind of have the same approach you just described. I try to get it to as many people as you can. And it's a good process. It's more person to person, and someone like you who's, just so affable and has such a good grounding and foundation of sound and identity as an artist, it's gonna resonate. So I saw your playlists stuff and your plays, and obviously that paid off a lot too. And then so like with a label, is that something I think as memory serves, I think you've been on a label or two before in different projects, have you not?
Yeah. Well, I had a label in France that I was on for like a limited vinyl release over there for the Past the Lights of Town album. And then my other band, Not in the Face, we were on a label, but it was our own label. So it was us. we were the machine.
Sure. Yeah. How did you find that, kind of manifesting your own label for the purpose of promoting yourself? And did that pay dividends in some way, or was it kind of just a see how it goes kind of thing?
It was kind of the see how it goes thing. Like, that band, we stayed pretty busy, but luckily, a lot of what paid for the band was we had some pretty good licensing opportunities and sync opportunities. So we had a few songs on like several TV shows, and that that paid for the record, that paid for like PR, and so it kind of just like fed itself, but it didn't really, it wasn't, we all had jobs, we all had to have jobs for sure. But this is the first band I've been in where I've been full-time. I've been a full-time musician for the last 4 years. I've been, touring for the last 18 years and stuff, but been a full-time dedicated musician for 4 years, which is great. It's cool to say, but now kind of like everybody's learning how to zag from all the zigs that we've been smoking, for the few months. So, but I don't know. I like the hustle, and I like everybody's like, kind of new tricks that they're learning, it's cool. It's cool to see people, like go, okay, well, this isn't working. I can't do this. So I can try this, and, just make a whole different thing out of it, So it's cool to see.
Yeah. I mean, I think as proof of like the 2000, I forget what year it was. I was going to say 2008, but that was the market. That was when the economy shut down. But whenever the transition was between, when the bottom fell out of the record industry, that moment, this moment, I mean, I think it's just, if you're going to be in the music game, you got to be ready to pivot when the time calls for it, because there's, the old guard is going to become, or the new guard is going to become the old guard within a matter of time. So I think we all have to be ready to shake and jive in one way or another.
Yeah. I'm like reluctantly getting on TikTok.
Man, I just don't know. Like, I see that for what it is. I'm like, I'm sorry, I have nothing to offer in that realm. It's like, enjoy it. I don't know what I could do, but
it's a cool marketing thing. But honestly, I'm just trying not to look at my phone as much. I'm trying to, it's like, I'm pretty active with my people on Instagram and stuff. I really don't get on Facebook that much anymore. I kind of only keep it for my parents. It's just, so I'm just trying not to like be, staring at my screen all the time. Which it can eat up a lot of your fucking day, and, it's just, I don't know. I'm kind of over the, as it's weird, as much as I'm in it, I'm kind of like over the, like the see me movement that's happening. It's like everybody has to be seen, and like, it's very, it's like, what lengths will you go to to be seen, but it's, a lot of it isn't like artistic expression. It's just like, you know, stunts and, goofy shit,
It
which
makes
is
sense.
entertaining, but, um,
Yeah, man. I wonder how much this whole lockdown has affected that whole the whole thing, because you're not the only person that's kind of been able to see that or feel that or just act on that notion of taking a step back. As I mentioned earlier, part of the dive I've taken into the new realm for myself is content. Like I put content out over the years, promote yourself, blah
sure.
blah blah. But I've never been someone who was like, here's content, here's content, here's content. But that's been one of my focuses, is specifically in the YouTube realm, because it's like your own TV station. It's like, okay, I can come up with some stuff for that. Let me get into
Yeah.
that. But also the Instagram, Facebook is like, okay, how can I provide content now within that surge of surge of pivoting or whatever? I feel like I've been able to not get too invested in the likes or whatever. It's like, I don't really care about that, because a lot of the gurus would tell you, don't worry too much about that. Just keep putting it out.
Yeah.
And so like, I don't feel like my emotions or mental state hinges on any of that. But at the same time, especially after seeing that Social Dilemma documentary, my worry is about the undercurrent, that the manipulation that happens to us that we don't even know about. You know what I mean? I don't know if you've seen that documentary, but they discuss the manipulation that is a gradual thing that we don't even know is happening to us. So that worries me a little bit.
Yeah.
But at the same time, just to go back to what you're saying, it's like a lot of the people not a lot, the few people I know who you could classify as influencers or content makers who are very good at what they do,
Sure.
have tens or hundreds of thousands of likes on, say, Instagram. Even they're taking a step back from those platforms. And I think maybe with the fact that we have had nothing to look at but our phones for 6 months, and the people who, do create this stuff and have thrived at it, even people like that and the people who consume people like that are like, all right, forget it. It's getting a little old
Yeah.
here. And it's got to hit that point at some point. So maybe we're
Yeah.
coming to that.
Well, it's funny because I remember about last October I saw a real frantic, like there was like a real frantic feeling over social media that was just like, they just like, I could see this like spaz of like, this need for a reaction, this like desperation for like a certain amount, like a number of clicks or likes and stuff, and I remember thinking about that last October, and I was like, I wonder what the tipping point of this is going to be. I wonder what like what's going to knock this off its axis and go, hey, like, it was going to be like, it would have to be like if, like TikTok was taken away or Instagram was like, all of a sudden deleted, like people's lives were just like, zapped out of that field. And, I was really curious about like, what's it going to take for people to like start connecting again, and not be in a room at a party of 80 people and everybody's staring at their phones, and I saw that break, I saw the break, in like April, May, like it was nice outside. People were like, can't do anything, so I'm going canoeing. I'm going like hiking, or like I'm turning my phone off for a week. I'm getting off Facebook. I don't need to see this shit, you know? But then I think everybody kind of had a few like moments to breathe. And now I think everything that's going on with the election is just like dragging people in, like, everything with like the Black Lives Matter movement. And, like it's both, they've got it, they got their, points where it needs to be seen too, but it's like the constant news flow of like, it's like, 24/7, just like bursts of, information to keep you shocked and hooked and like, like, just seeing the whole world spin out of control, and you're just going, well, that squash you planted is dying. Why don't you go pay attention to that for a minute, and it just like, or just you budget the time, but be able to budget your time with it. Like, go, okay, I'm going to post this thing. I'm going to be on social media for like 20 minutes or whatever, say what's up to people. And then like, I got shit to do, got songs to write, got, books to read, like focus on that. So I've been seeing like social media kind of like picking back up again, but I did enjoy the 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 breath it took, maybe a gasp. Yeah, but
Yeah, I
I
mean,
did
the
enjoy it.
political thing is definitely true. And what's scary about that is, which that documentary pointed out, is that, what these algorithms do is they feed your already, you know, what ideas you already have or beliefs you already
Yeah,
had. It just feeds those more and more and more and more. And so the polarization becomes further and further apart. And that's what's obviously, without question, elevating such a, you strike me
a
as a
rift.
centrist. Maybe I'm wrong there, but I'm a centrist. I think we,
I am,
just,
yeah, for sure.
yeah. I mean, so you have friends, you have family, you have fans on both
Yeah,
sides. So
yeah.
you have to. I'm trying to, do the best I can to engage these people. And maybe it gets a little fiery, but if you're dealing with the right person, you're going to be on the left compared to them, and vice versa. So,
Yeah.
you got to. I'm trying to just get, because the
Well, I think
dialogue
I
is
think too
ending.
far. Yeah, I feel like too far on either side is too far.
Right.
I think it's like this thing is painted everybody as, you know, an opposite end of the spectrum to the other person, and you're going, really pretty much it's pretty much the same values. There's only like a
Yeah.
couple small like voting issues,
Right.
like there's like probably 3 or 4 voting issues that are like, you know, that people could go one side or the other. But other than that, I think it's just like fucking gang mentality.
Totally.
It's just kind of like you're either sharks or jets, and like everything else is, you can fuck off, and it's going. I mean, I don't. It's never been that way before. It's always been kind of like people like voted, in private, and like you didn't have to like go out there and say who you sided with, because
Right.
people just didn't give a shit. People did not give a shit, and but now it's like people, you're forced to pick a side, and
Yeah.
it's unfortunate because it's I feel like I don't know, it's a huge division tool that is being used against us, and it's, I don't know. Then I'm in the same place again of like, wondering what the tipping point is going to be. Wondering like if these are the embers for a civil war, or is this like what's going to happen? When does this stir into such a frenzy that real shit goes down? Besides just people being keyboard warriors.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to find out soon, because the election is that point. I mean, we'll see what
Yeah,
happens. My family and I have rearranged our life plans around the election. There's
yeah,
other factors, but that became a big factor because, if I'll be honest, I mean, if Trump wins, it's going to be loud for a long time. If Biden wins, the right people on the far right are going to be pissed. But they've had their man in office for a while, so I don't think they'll be quite as pissed off. But I think we just got to send Trump on his way to settle things down a bit, because he really is,
yeah.
just no matter what your politics are, he is a flamer of the fire. You know what I mean? He
Sure.
does that for sure.
And I mean,
Um,
I mean, I've got like, I'm from a small town. My brother was a police officer, a Marine vet. Like, I've got a lot of friends and family that are pretty staunch Republicans, and like, it's cool. Like, but we talk about it, but the one thing they will also agree on is like, they're like, he does love to throw some gasoline on a fire, and you're like, yeah, man, that would be cool if he just didn't do that, but
Right. Is what it is. So that's kind of a good segue, talking about your family a little bit, because that was a great start. What I really enjoy doing is kind of going back to wee Jonathan as a boy. Sure. And kind of tell me where you come from, and also the early years of music. Not only what struck you at young ages, but when you started playing and all that good stuff. Because I just love hearing about the artist as a very young person.
Oh, so. Yeah. Well, I'm originally from Longview, Texas. It's like on the northeastern edge of Texas, right on the Louisiana border. And my parents were in a band. My parents were the house band in a religious cult. And so so they lived in Europe for like 9 years and were with the group over there. And then, and they escaped and came back to kind of like, hide out here. I was born while they're kind of hiding out. And so there's always guitars and cassette tapes and stuff like that. And, I remember when my dad came home with the first like Traveling Wilburys tape, and he was like trembling of like, all my favorite guys made a fucking band, and I remember that being like a big thing. But, my dad was really into the Beatles, really into like Clapton and, Hendrix and, stuff like that. And my mom was more into like, Aretha Franklin, and the mom was in the Papas and the Supremes, and a lot of classical music. And so they kind of came, my mom's from California, so she kind of had that like, hippie vibe, like, just was into some really great, like kind of groovy California stuff. And my dad was all into guitar, like cool guitars, stuff. So both those were like really influential on me growing up. We just, all the kids, we all sang harmonies. We all played, would in church, and like, we'd go to, I remember, we'd go to these nursing homes and like play, like we'd dress up like the nativity and sing Christmas carols and stuff for like tips and stuff. And have like fake sheep and things like that. And but it wasn't till this guy at our church like gave me a horse. Like I'd been like praying for like annoyingly praying for a horse, and this guy gave me this horse from our church. And but the deal was I had to work for a neighbor's ranch to pay for it.
How old were you when that happened?
9. And so that was where, when I started working for him, Gerald Stone on the Stone Lake Ranch, that's where I learned about country music, because it was like, I heard it at school. You heard it, heard it everywhere, because it was like it's a country town. It's like, there's a classic rock station coming out of Shreveport and 2 country stations coming out of, East Texas. 3, it was like the 2 mainstream, and then like the one called the Ranch that was like all classic country. But when we would be working, we'd have the truck doors open and just like be blasting, the country radio stations there. And I remember being like so into Garth Brooks and like so into Brooks and Dunn, and that when Gerald would like hear these bands, he just thought, he was just like, this is the end of country music. Like this is like, garbage. He just thought it was, and I was like, you're old, you don't know nothing. It's like, but then he'd play us like Ray Price and, George Jones and Merle Haggard. He played all those guys, like Kitty Wells and he was just kind of more into that like old school honky tonk stuff. And so I learned, I just heard so much of that. And, around that time, maybe like 12 or 13, I started kind of picking on the guitar. And then my horse died when I was 14. And then I was like full on guitar. Just went straight from like being like 4-H, 4-H club, farm and ranch, everything to like full-time guitar. Um, and which I should be a lot better than I am because, but no, it was just kind of, at the time it was like, 13, 14, it was like I was learning all the like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, all the grunge songs, Alice in Chains and stuff. Because it's like, I, as a kid, you still liked I still loved all the country music and stuff, and but it's like you go to school and you get into junior high and it's like, what band shirt are you going to wear to school? It says everything about you. It's like, it's going to be what shapes your cliques, you're flying the flag of like how you going to get down,
So what flag were you flying then? In junior high?
well, I was really into, the grunge thing.
As a safe flag to fly back in that day.
Yeah.
A lot of people
flag.
were flying that flag back then.
Yeah. It's really in the grunge, but I was like, it was happening, that was like what was going on then, it was like
Oh,
movement,
Oh yeah.
Good. And then, and then I remember, a friend of mine gave me, I had like got my first like CD player, and a friend of mine gave me the Nine Inch Nails Halo CD, and it scared the shit out of me. And I was like, what is this like magical shit, And that kind of that opened me up to a whole lot of other bands, like I got really into, Marilyn Manson, which my parents hated so much, but, got really into like Massive Attack and Portishead and like the whole kind of trip hop thing, and like just some like industrial bands, Ministry and Skinny Puppy and stuff. You get a little older and it's all like, Judas Priest and, whatnot. It's like, so yeah, it's just kind of, but it's weird because it's like in a small town like that, it's like, you go to a bar and it's like, especially in that town, it's like George Strait and Candlebox. It's like, that's what's on the jukebox, and like Aerosmith and stuff, so you kind of just like, I don't know, just being around, there's just so much. I do really respect that, of like a lot of people in my hometown are like music, like freaks. They just love it, love live music, love going to see shows. They still love like downloading and buying albums, and it's just like, it's a physical thing for them, and so it's weird because it's like when you start like, shaping songs. I started writing some music, and I think around then I started getting more into like high school. I was dipping into like some Counting Crows and like Tracy Chapman, and then I heard like Townes Van Zandt, Chris Christopherson. You'd always, of course, known Willie Nelson like in the peripherals, but like starting to get into like song guys, like songwriter guys for reals. And then I was kind of, that started really tipping my ear, of going like, oh, well, what if I didn't have to drag this half stack around to all these gigs? I could just drag an acoustic guitar, and, what changes,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like your words get heard, and that was really important for me, so yeah, just kind of like started picking on this, the acoustic guitar, and it just kind of like, started playing shows around town, went out to the West Coast for a little while and played some shows on the street, and like ran out of money real quick and had to like borrow some money to like get home. And
where on the West Coast were you?
I was in San Diego for a couple months, and I was just like, I was going to go out there and like be a busker and like, San Diego, I was trying to get up to LA, and just like ran out of money, and like, my songs weren't very good.
How
So
old were you
it
when you
didn't
were
help
doing
any.
that?
I think 21. I was 21 when I went out there,
Mm-hmm.
and came back, and decided to go back to school for music, and then I moved to Austin when I was 25, and yeah, the summer I was 25, and just kind of I came down here to be like the next Towns Van Zandt, and that was really important to me to like earn all the songs and be like, I'm gonna get wasted all the time. I'm gonna go like find myself in like horrible positions or like scary situations just so I can write and I'll have the adventure, and I'll write about these adventures. It's
Sure.
really important for me to like live like that fast and like hard, and kind of like there's like a punishing element to it that I was really trying to like, you know, live by a creed with that. And but I came down here at kind of like the rise of red dirt country, and like so my songs were just like people were like, I don't have any idea what you're talking about. Like they're like, it's not, it wasn't like, yeah, that just kind of dominated the scene of like this kind of like fraternity like style music. And it just kind of, I just wasn't in that circle. So my buddy Wes and I started this band, not in the face out of like frustration that we thought we had. Yeah, I thought I had some pretty good songs, and like, but I couldn't get anybody to listen. And I was like, I remember seeing this band at the beauty bar one night, and they were like so bummed out because nobody was clapping for them after their songs, but they just weren't like engaging with anybody, and they weren't moving the crowd. They weren't like, it wasn't like they weren't with the group. They weren't with the crowd, and like, I don't know. They just weren't like winning them over in any way. And I was talking with Wes. I was like, wouldn't it be awesome if we just started a band that just like freaked the fuck out every show? And he was like, oh yeah, great, let's do that. So we kind of, it just kind of started off this like little joke side project for fun to just kind of blow some steam off because we couldn't get any other gigs. And and it just kind of like took off. So we were on the road pretty heavy for 6 years with that band, but I had shelved a record. The Past Lights Town album, I had shelved that album for 7 years.
Wow.
And sent it around as like a solo record that I had finished up. So that's always a fun one when like people are like, oh, you come from a rock and roll band and then like now you're doing country, and I'm like, yeah, and then they like go back and like listen to my albums from like 2004, and they're like, oh, you've been doing the exact same kind of music since like 2004, but it's just kind of the world is catching up with it now. And so it was cool. We paused on that record for a little while, and then that was I sent it out to a couple friends of mine. It ended up getting picked up on a little French psych label. So that was what started me touring solo again in France and England. But the shows were selling out over there. So it was like, I was like, man, something's kind of moving with this, solo gig, and I need to like hunt it down. So, fast forward, a few years later, and here we are. But it's I kind of knew the trajectory of it. I just been like waiting to record it, and like, fine tuning the songs to like kind of craft like the direction that I was going to go in. I didn't want the record to be like, here's the best 10 songs that I have. It was like, no, here's like the best songs that I have that like tell a story together, and like they were written together for certain reasons to go with one another, and like accent each other.
Is this Past Lights to Town or Westford that you're talking about right now?
Well, I think with
both.
Past Lights Town, yeah, both. Past Lights Town was like, I wrote like, 20 something songs for the record. And I think we put 14 on there. And then same thing with Westward. I think it was 20, I wrote 26 songs, and then we put 10 on the record. And then, but I released 2 other ones on a little EP beforehand that were kind of like the water testers.
Sure.
But I've, I kind of like a few years ago, I just like, and I definitely feel like it was late to the game of like a few years ago, I saw the kind of importance of, I'm like, well, I don't have any label or management or support, like anything like this of like, this PR companies that like build these mystiques, and they build like this kind of like experience behind these bands where it's like, it's not just a band that you like, you have to like, it's a movement, and it's like it's a vibe and a theme and like
journey.
Yeah, it's a journey.
Journey a lot, yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's a journey that this band wants you to take with them,
Right.
And yeah, and so you kind of start thinking about like where that's gonna go, and like what's gonna happen next, and I'm already thinking about the next project that I'm working on is I'm doing a new EP in December, and then I got a new record that we're gonna start working on after that, maybe in the summer. But it's I'm already like thinking of like visuals of like, okay, how does this lead from one thing to the other, like what's the natural steps, and also kind of like how far can I step forward without ever stepping backwards, like keep creating and keep like making like the next projects like stronger and stronger and stronger.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's the only way to do it. I mean, it seems anytime you hear about business people talking about how to approach it, that's how they say to approach it. And it's definitely the most fruitful from our vantage point. It can be hard to pound out material, bang, 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 but there's no question it pays the biggest dividends, and just in terms of, what you want to look back on as an artist, you want to look back on a prolific output as much as possible. Yeah. Just going back to some of those things you said as a kid, I wanted to, because you said the how seminal moment the Wilburys thing was for your pops, and that Never Makes a Sound, which is the first song on your album, really comes out with a real kind of petty, Tom Petty vibe, especially the intro of it. It's like, oh, this sounds like Petty. And I know I seem to remember when Petty died, you seen an acknowledgement made by you of what an influence he was on you.
Big time. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, the other, go ahead.
Oh, no, I mean, I think especially with this album, and like the way I started seeing like myself being the trajectory of how I wanted to express myself, what I liked so much about Tom Petty was, all his albums are like timeless, and they're distinctly American sounding. There is like this relaxed vibe with them, but it's still tough, and it's still got edge, and it's still got this like perseverance to it, but it's still conversational. And that's like something I've always like taken notice, and just really, really dug in with him. And so, yeah, I got this tattoo for him the morning after he died, this little rose. But he's probably one of my biggest influences. And
and then the other thing you said was how your parents, obviously they had good taste in music, and how much they hated the Marilyn Manson phase. And I never got into Manson, but my parents also had pretty good music taste. But for me, it was when I was in, I think it was like 5th, 6th grade, I was really into like gangster rap. My pops hated it. Like on the way to a basketball game, I got to get myself psyched up, so I put Tupac on or Biggie, and he would hate it. But other than that, other than the hardcore rap, he's always enjoyed everything that me and my brother have played around the growing up and stuff. But it's got to be something they hate, really, otherwise you're not doing it right.
Yeah, I didn't really get into rap until like, maybe like my early 20s. But even like I never really got into gangster rap. I got way more into hip hop, Wu-Tang kind of being the
I was huge
the
into
catalyst for that.
Love Wu-Tang. Huge.
And and all the projects that each one of their members put out, that was kind of like, that was like a side street for me, but I'm like, I'm not trying to be a rapper, nothing.
Me neither. Me neither. But yeah, no,
yeah.
Wu-Tang was they were probably Tupac and Wu-Tang are probably my favorite rap stuff of all time, and especially that early, Wu-Tang, and then the stuff that came from that, like you said. So we're coming down to kind of the last 10, 15 minutes here. So I just wanted to kind of round out some things. You did a great, a nice history of yourself. So that covered a lot of ground in terms of questions I had for you. But kind of the pull in two different directions seems, based on what you said in terms of your musical styles of the projects, of the rock and roll of Not in the Face, and the singer-songwriter country, which I can ask you more about the country label and how you feel about it, because listening to the Westward album, it doesn't really strike me as country at all, almost. I mean, obviously the country influence is there, but I'm sure you have a problem with the idea of genres in general, as I do, and I think most people do, and I understand the point they serve in terms of trying to funnel people into your music, and it's just the way it is. But if you look at some of these genre names they have these days, I'm sure when you're doing your own PR and they ask you to do a genre and it says, like underwear core or whatever the hell it is, metal core, it's like crazy. It's like, what is that? You know what I mean? But anyway, getting back to the question at hand, it seemed like you were kind of plunged into the rock and roll thing out of a very rock and roll canon, in that you were pissed off. You wanted to get people's fucking attention, and Not in the Face was a great project to do that. But also it came through that you did love what you were doing, and you sustained it for 6 years. So, do you see yourself, this is kind of multi-pointed question, but I guess, do you see yourself ever going back to the rock and roll thing? Are you kind of, this is the path you wanted originally, you found your way back to it, and now this is where your trajectory lies?
This is the original path that I was going for, but the things that I learned, like, one of the things that I did learn about, being in a band like Not in the Face is like, we all learned how to run a business together. We learned how to do like, our bank statements and like write-offs and merch, and like learned how to dot all of our, I's and cross our T's as a group. And so I've been able to take those like business standpoints from that band and take them to this. And, but also one thing that like, I didn't realize before Not in the Face was like, I didn't know how to be a front man. I had no, like, I was just like, I was in the same boat as that band that we saw at Beauty Bar. And I was just like, I'm up there doing my songs, but I'm not grabbing anybody's attention, And so like, I think, that Not in the Face helped out so much, because in that band, I learned how to work with the crowd, how to communicate, and like how to get the songs across in like a bigger way, as a front man than I did as like a storyteller, so now that I'm taking this back in, and like, we're playing like honky tonks and dance halls, and, but also, we're doing, indie clubs, and, it's kind of like everywhere in between. And I think this album is like a perfect record for like anybody that's like, for like anybody that's ever been curious about country. This is like the gateway drug. It's like, you don't have to dive all the way in. The influences are in there, but I mean, like, I feel like the biggest parts, that have influenced me, that feel country to me, it's like how do Dwight Yoakam, Tom Petty, and Bob Seger, like, how do their songs all congeal in a room, and it's like, okay, you want that tough vibe, you want it to feel good, you want it to feel like cool, but also, we're playing dance halls, so it's like, if you're not spinning a dance floor, then it's not going to happen. And it's like, and it's crazy to see a dance floor pack out to a song like Never Makes a Sound, which seems like a Tom Petty radio kind of single style song, Mm-hmm. And when you watch a whole dance floor turn, in a honky tonk to that song, it's like, okay, I'm stepping over something here. I'm like, it's an all inclusive deal. And it's like, this record was meant to, like, we kept the phrase like timeless. I know timeless time. We talked about it all the time, to simplify and like trim the fat and like edit and like say what you mean and like don't fluff around it, of just like strength and simplicity, are like, is what I was finding in all the timeless records that I adore and I grew up on, that really like make up the fiber of me, was like the strength and simplicity. And I really went back and like edited and worked and hammered out those songs to find that simplicity, to say something without overstating, and that's, so that's kind of like, I don't know, it's those influences are in there. It's like, the 10-year-old me listening to, Brooks and Dunn, like the high school, Tom Petty, Bob Seger, like, it's just, it's all in there, and there's like a freedom to it, that I really, really wanted to come across, of just this kind of directional, like westward. It's like you're going somewhere and the future is unknown,
Oh, it comes through. You definitely succeeded in everything you just laid out as the goals while you were making it. So well done,
man.
in that department.
Thank you.
I concur completely about simplicity. It's something, if you're into country music, for me, it's blues music, obviously, but
Sure.
all the timeless stuff, it's simple, man. It's keep it simple, stupid. I mean, you can't overstate that. It's just like, deliver it true and clear, and eliminate any fluff around it. It's something I've striven for. And as you get older, it becomes even more, you're seeking truth, and truth is most often something simple. You know what I mean? It's why cliches are cliches, is because like they've been said 100 times over, but it's because they're fucking true, So I'm definitely on that train with you. And just to kind of, you brought up the 10-year-old you, and that's, like I mentioned, that's always so intriguing to me. And kind of my last mega question for you here is, before we sign off, is you're an artist who, I think what resonates with people, it resonates with me, and it's something I strive for and I hope to have within myself as well, is a couple of things. And one is, you're an artist, you're a man, you're a grown man,
right?
But you're in touch with that boy. Okay. True. So the boy, the child within you is always coming through, and people pick up on that. And I think the great artists have that in them. Anytime you see Elvis do like one of his little things with a little, smile, or you see Little Richard acting like a fool, or you name it, right? It's because there's a child in there. The child is in there. And so that comes through in your music very well. And you also have this you have a very romantic presentation. Obviously you have a romantic spirit and mindset, and it comes through in your art.
I'm a romantic dude,
Yeah, no, it comes through for sure. And so, that being said, the artist who's in touch with his past self, his child, his inner child, tries to deliver it through a man's world perspective, or any way you want to put that. Someone who has a very romantic, positive outlook. Mm-hmm. Where do you see yourself, and then yourself taking a step outside of that, the music industry, and then another step outside of that, the world at large, moving forward these next 6 months, year, 2 years, because I know you've had a lot of time to think about it, all those aspects. I'm sure you have thought about it, and I'm sure you don't have any answers, but where are you pushing yourself forward over the next 6 months to 5 years, what have you? And where do you see the industry going, as we've seen it crumble before our eyes now? And then if you want to expand that into sort of a civilization thing, I'd be interested to hear that too.
I think touching on like the boyhood aspect, I think that's just, I think whenever I see an artist that I really respect and appreciate, they're in touch with their vulnerable side, and they're able to like dance with that vulnerability and like express it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you feel that connection with an artist because you don't feel like they're holding back from you. And it's like when you connect with a friend and they go, well, shit, man, we had a breakthrough conversation. And it's just because like, they're like, well, cause I told you everything, and I meant it.
Mm-hmm.
And I always really love that, about the, be it, Bob Dylan or Trent Reznor, I love that they could like go there with you, and where I see the market, I feel like I've seen the market heading into just being the singles only. Albums are going to be few and fewer far apart. And I feel like people are going to have whole careers on like one or two songs, but with no albums or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And because that they can live online, they don't have to tour or whatever, they can monetize videos and things like that. But it's weird. So I put an EP out a couple years ago, the Color Me Lucky EP, and that was what I wanted to like be the first step of like, I knew what Westward was going to sound like, and this is the first step in heading that direction because I knew I had to bridge the two records, and so
Like
I
Reservoir
thought
Dogs into Pulp Fiction.
right, and I knew I had to bridge the gap in between them.
Right.
So I started working with certain soundscapes and things like that I knew were going to be on Westward, and started trickling them into the EP. But the funny thing is like nobody will review an EP. Nobody will give you press for an EP. And so it's like you can put out singles and you can have a hit or whatever like all the time, but nobody's going to review you or like take you seriously as an artist unless you put out a whole full-length album.
Right.
And so I'm really seeing for me, I wanted this whole record to be like, it was a whole concept, and then, but I've also been writing out songs that don't necessarily live in the world of a record, so I put those in my side pile of like, the next thing I put out are, I'm working on an EP right now, but I'm going to put them all out as singles.
Mm-hmm.
Don't tell anybody. But yeah, so I'm like, I'm just worried. I'm going to put out some singles for a little while, probably this year, and then, or just for this year, and then while I start working on the next full length, But at this point, I've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of songs, and so now it's about like going back in and looking at those songs of going like, how is this representing me, and if it can't represent me, maybe I could find somebody to sing it, or it's like, how's this, what are the stories that I need to tell that are gonna like, they're gonna be able to narrate the trajectory that I'm on, and how do I want to present myself, how do I want to like, how do I want to tell my story, because it's like, I don't know, when you look back on, like, Tom Petty passed away 3 years ago, and and the first thing that you do is you go back and start looking through his albums, and that's how you remember him. That's how you remember, the connections that you had was, hearing, Running Down a Dream for the first time, stuff like that. And and it's hard to think about when you're younger, but like, I'll be 40 in a couple weeks, and it's like, I'm only going to put a few albums out in my whole life. And so it's like, I want them to count, and I want the same thing of like, whenever, when I'm 80, people go back and, they don't have to sit through a 7-minute song of me like rambling. They'll be like, no, he really trim the fat on there. So.
And when are you trying to get back on the road? Where we stand right now with COVID and everything, and are you just holding off on planning, or are you like, all right, enough's enough, let's try for next spring?
No, I mean, I've got some shows, but we've really had to be selective on them. So right now, you know, a lot of them are outdoors. You know, some things have to be in place, you know, as far as like social distancing and things like that. But I've been pretty selective of the shows that we're doing. But, you know, I definitely want to tour. I definitely want to tour pretty hard for Westward whenever we are allowed to go back out. But until that happens, you know, I'm not trying to like push it. I'm not trying to get sick, and I'm not trying to get, you know, I'm not trying to get people in a position where they're going to, you know, feel vulnerable or get sick, you know. So,
word, brother. Well, thank you so much for being with
absolutely.
me. You're the kind of guy I could talk about music with for a long time, but we got to stop it. So thanks again. And the new record sounds really great. It's a really strong piece of work. So congratulations on it.
Thank you.
And yeah, man, hopefully I'll see you around town. I'm kind of on lockdown with the family. I don't go out much at all, but hopefully sooner than later. And yeah, man, good luck moving forward.
Congrats on your podcast, man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Much success. Absolutely.
All right. Take care, John.
See you, buddy.